At my brother's wedding, I discovered my husband and my sister-in-law were having a secret affair. The champagne flute slipped from my fingers, shattering against the marble floor of the country club ballroom as I watched my husband Daniel's hand slide possessively down Rachel's bare back, his lips pressed against her ear while she threw her head back, laughing. At my brother Marcus's wedding reception, wearing the bridesmaid dress I'd helped her pick out. The entire room fell silent as 300 guests turned to stare, but I didn't move, couldn't breathe, could only watch as Daniel's eyes met mine across the dance floor with something worse than guilt. Triumph. Rachel, my brother's new wife, touched Daniel's chest intimately before her gaze found mine, and she smiled, actually smiled, that same sweet expression she'd worn when asking me to be her maid of honor 3 months ago. I'm Cassandra Pierce, 34 years old, and until this moment, I'd believed I had everything figured out. 6 years of marriage to Daniel, a successful architect who still brought me coffee in bed every Sunday. A thriving career as a forensic accountant. Ironic, considering I'd missed the biggest fraud happening right under my nose. My younger brother Marcus, finally settling down with someone who seemed to adore him. But standing there in my emerald silk dress, designer heels planted in champagne and glass shards, watching my husband and new sister-in-law spring apart like guilty teenagers, I realized the past year of their friendship had been something else entirely. The way Rachel had insisted on hiring Daniel's firm to design their new home. Those late-night work sessions he'd mentioned. Her countless texts about wedding planning advice she needed from me while probably scheduling her next rendezvous with my husband. And now, at the culmination of months of lies, they couldn't even wait until after cutting the cake to put their hands on each other. My mother materialized beside me, her manicured hand gripping my elbow. "Cassandra, you're making a scene. This is Marcus's special day." Not, "Are you all right?" or "What's happening?" Just concern for appearances, as always. My father stood behind her, his jaw clenched, having clearly witnessed the same intimate moment I had. Marcus himself was across the room, oblivious, laughing with his groomsmen near the bar. The band had stopped playing. 300 sets of eyes burned into me, waiting for the scorned wife to dissolve into hysterics, to scream, to run crying from the room. Instead, I bent down carefully, picked up the largest shard of broken crystal, and dropped it into my clutch, my mother flinching at the gesture, before meeting Daniel's now pale face with perfect calm. He knew that look. He'd seen it exactly once before, 7 years ago, when I'd helped prosecute his former business partner for embezzlement. The case had taken me 9 months to build, and by the time I was done, the man lost everything: his company, his reputation, his freedom. Daniel had told me then that my patience terrified him more than any outburst ever could. "Sweetheart," he started, taking a step toward me. "Don't." The single word cut across the silent ballroom. I turned to Rachel, who had the audacity to look nervous now, her hand fluttering to the diamond necklace at her throat. Marcus's wedding gift, purchased with money from the trust fund our grandmother had left us. "That's a beautiful necklace. Marcus told me it cost $40,000. He was so excited to surprise you." I smiled, bright and terrible. "I hope you enjoyed every penny." My mother's grip tightened. "Cassandra Ann Pierce, I'm leaving now." I smoothed down my dress, ignoring the champagne staining the silk. "Please tell Marcus I'm sorry I couldn't stay for the cake cutting. I seem to have lost my appetite." I looked directly at Daniel. "I'll be gone when you get home. Don't bother calling. Your number is already blocked. And Rachel?" She flinched. "Welcome to the family. You're going to fit right in." The walk to the exit took forever, my heels clicking against marble with military precision, while whispers erupted behind me like wildfire. I felt my father following, his footsteps heavier, angrier. He'd never liked Daniel, had called him too smooth at our engagement party. But I'd been 28 and convinced I knew better than everyone else. My phone buzzed incessantly in my clutch. Daniel probably, or my mother demanding I return to handle this privately. I ignored it, because here's what neither Daniel, nor Rachel, nor any of the shocked guests knew. I'd figured out their affair 2 weeks ago when a routine audit of our joint accounts revealed charges for a hotel room in Napa The same weekend, Daniel claimed he was at a conference, and Rachel told Marcus she was visiting her sister. The same weekend, I'd hired a private investigator. Outside, the California sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and red. My father reached me as the valet brought his car around. "Cassandra." "Not now, Dad." I kissed his cheek. "I need to make some calls. Tell Marcus I love him. Tell him nothing else. He deserves one perfect day before his marriage implodes." My father's face told me he understood more than I'd said. I climbed into my car, a sleek black Mercedes that Daniel had surprised me with last Christmas, probably purchased with guilt money while he was busy sleeping with my brother's fiancée. The leather seat was still warm from the afternoon sun. I pulled out my phone, bypassing the 17 missed calls, and dialed a number I'd programmed 3 days ago. "Ms. Pierce?" Attorney Sarah Chen answered on the first ring. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you until Monday." "Change of plans. I need you to file the divorce papers tomorrow morning. And Sarah?" I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. Mascara perfect, lipstick unsmudged, eyes cold as winter. "Activate everything we discussed. All of it." "Are you certain?" "Once we start this, there's no going back." I thought about Daniel's hand on Rachel's skin, her smile, my mother's concern for appearances over her own daughter's humiliation, Marcus's trust fund buying jewelry for the woman betraying him, the manila envelope sitting in my home safe, stuffed with 8 months of private investigator reports, bank statements, and photographs that would destroy both their lives. I've never been more certain of anything. Let's burn it all down. As I drove away from the country club, away from my brother's ruined wedding and my demolished marriage, I felt something unexpected. Not grief, not rage, but cold, clarifying purpose. Daniel and Rachel thought they'd been clever. They had no idea I'd spent the last 2 weeks learning exactly how to dismantle every single thing they valued. And unlike them, I knew how to be patient. I knew how to build a case. I knew how to make sure justice wasn't just served. It was catastrophic. The real reception was about to begin. And this time, I'd be the one smiling. The private investigator's office smelled like stale coffee and old paper. Victoria Hammond sat across from me Monday morning, sliding a second manila envelope across her desk. "I wasn't sure you'd actually go through with it after the wedding. Show me everything." I'd spent Sunday in a hotel suite, ignoring 43 calls from Daniel, 12 from Rachel, and a tearful voicemail from Marcus asking what had happened. My mother left a message about family dignity. My father sent one text. "I'm proud of you." Victoria opened the envelope. The first photograph showed Daniel and Rachel at a boutique hotel in Carmel 6 months ago. His arm around her waist, her lips on his neck. This was their first trip together, March 15th. Your husband told you he was at a sustainability conference in Portland. He brought me back a coffee mug from Powell's Books. I remembered holding it, pleased he'd thought of me. The memory tasted like poison now. She spread more photos across the desk. Daniel and Rachel at dinner in San Francisco, walking on a beach in Monterey, entering her apartment, the one Marcus didn't know she kept, the one she claimed she'd given up when they got engaged. "She's been maintaining a separate residence this whole time. Your brother has no idea." "How many times?" 17 documented meetings over 8 months, probably more we missed. Victoria pulled out bank statements highlighted in yellow. "Your joint account paid for 9 of those hotel rooms. He's been funding the affair with your money, Cassandra." The cold fury that had sustained me through the weekend crystallized into something sharper. "What else?" "Rachel's employment history gets interesting." Victoria produced another document. "She told Marcus she's a marketing consultant working from home. That's partially true. What she didn't mention is that her biggest client is Daniel's architecture firm. Has been for 2 years, since before she even met your brother." The timeline clicked into place. She targeted him. "Looks that way. Marcus is a venture capitalist with a substantial trust fund. Rachel has $60,000 in credit card debt, and her consulting business barely breaks even. Then there's this." Victoria's expression turned grim. She handed me a lease agreement. Rachel and Daniel signed a 12-month lease on a loft downtown 3 weeks ago. Rent is $4,500 a month, split between them. My hands didn't shake as I examined the document. They'd been planning to leave us, planning a life together while wearing our wedding rings, sleeping in our beds, lying to our faces. They were going to wait until after the wedding. Smart move financially. Once Rachel was legally married to Marcus, she'd have access to his accounts. A divorce settlement would set her up nicely, especially if she could prove he was the one cheating, which is probably why Daniel suggested Marcus hire that new assistant, the pretty one. Victoria pulled up social media photos on her laptop. Gina Torres, 26, hired 6 weeks ago at Daniel's recommendation. Marcus has been working late with her a lot. They were setting him up. Classic long con. Rachel gets married, establishes access to Marcus's money, then Daniel manufactures evidence of Marcus having an affair. Rachel files for divorce, takes half of everything, and rides off into the sunset with your husband. Victoria closed her laptop. If you hadn't caught them at the wedding, they'd have pulled it off. I stood, gathering the evidence. Send copies to Sarah Chen. She'll need them for the divorce filing. Cassandra. Victoria's voice stopped me at the door. What you're planning, it's going to get ugly. These people will fight back. Let them try. I met her eyes. I didn't spend 6 years prosecuting financial criminals to let my own husband steal from me. Sarah Chen's law office occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise. Her reputation for ruthless divorce proceedings had cost me a $50,000 retainer, but she was worth every penny. The divorce papers were filed this morning, she confirmed, gesturing to a chair. Daniel's been served. He called here 4 times already. Good. I set Victoria's evidence on her desk. This is everything. The affair, the secret apartment, Rachel's financial situation, the setup they were planning for my brother. Sarah examined the documents with professional detachment. This changes things significantly. California is a no-fault divorce state, but financial fraud is another matter entirely. If we can prove Daniel used marital assets to fund an affair and plan a future with another woman, we can argue for a severely disproportionate asset division. What about the house? Your name is on the deed. Your inheritance paid the down payment. With this evidence, we can make a strong case that you keep it. She made notes on a legal pad. Your salary as a forensic accountant actually exceeds his income from the architecture firm. No alimony for him. We'll freeze the joint accounts immediately. Already done. I'd emptied our joint account Sunday night. $200,000 transferred to a new account in my name only. Technically legal since both names were on the account. Ethically questionable. I didn't care. Sarah smiled. You're my favorite kind of client. What about your brother? What about him? Does he know about his wife's affair? The secret apartment? Her debt? Not yet. Marcus had left me 6 voicemails, each more confused than the last. He thinks I had some kind of breakdown at the wedding. Cassandra. Sarah set down her pen. I have to ask, how far are you willing to take this? I thought about Rachel's smile as she touched my husband's chest, my mother's concern for appearances, Daniel's triumphant eyes meeting mine across the ballroom, the 12-month lease they'd signed together, planning their future while destroying mine. All the way. I want them to lose everything. Then we're going to need to move fast. Once Rachel realizes you have this evidence, she'll try to secure her position with Marcus. Play the victim, probably claim Daniel seduced her. Sarah pulled out a timeline. We need to expose them both before she can spin the narrative. My phone buzzed. Marcus again. I declined the call. What do you need from me? Nothing yet. But Cassandra? Sarah's expression turned serious. Your brother is going to be collateral damage. His marriage, his trust, his financial situation if Rachel manages to file for divorce first. It's all at risk. Are you prepared for that? I looked out the window at the city below. Somewhere down there, Daniel was probably panicking. Rachel was calculating her next move. My mother was worrying about what the country club ladies would say. And Marcus, my baby brother who'd spent our childhood following me around, who'd called me his hero when I graduated law school, who'd asked me to walk him down the aisle because our father had been too emotional, Marcus was still living in blissful ignorance. Marcus deserves the truth. My voice was steady, even if it destroys him, especially then. I'll draw up the documents. We'll expose everything. The affair, the financial fraud, the setup they planned. But be ready. When this goes public, your entire family will be collateral damage. I thought about that broken champagne flute, the silence in the ballroom, the choice between protecting my brother's illusions or arming him with truth. There was no real choice at all. Do it. Tuesday morning, I drove to Marcus's house, the house Daniel had designed, with its floor-to-ceiling windows and sustainable materials, the house I'd toured excitedly 6 months ago, imagining future family gatherings. Rachel's car sat in the driveway. She was home. Perfect. I rang the doorbell twice before Rachel answered, still in her honeymoon negligee, though it was nearly noon. Her expression shifted from surprise to calculation in a heartbeat. "Cassandra, we need to talk." "Yes, we do." I pushed past her into the foyer. "Where's Marcus?" "At work. Listen. About the wedding." "Save it." I turned to face her. "I know everything. The affair started 8 months ago. The secret apartment on 5th Street. The 17 hotel visits Daniel paid for with our joint account. The 12-month lease you signed together 3 weeks ago." Rachel's face went white, then red. "You've been spying on us?" "I'm a forensic accountant. Following money trails is literally my job." I pulled out my phone, opened the photo gallery. "Here's you and Daniel in Carmel, San Francisco, Monterey. Should I continue?" "You can't. Marcus can't see those." Her voice cracked. "It'll destroy him." "I'm aware." I watched her squirm. "Just like you were aware when you targeted my brother for his trust fund. When you kept that apartment Marcus doesn't know about. When you and Daniel planned to frame him with his assistant so you could divorce him and take half his money." Her mouth opened and closed. "I don't know what you're talking about." Gina Torres, 26 years old, hired 6 weeks ago at Daniel's recommendation. Convenient that Marcus has been working late with her so often. I stepped closer. "Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? I put a partner at Daniel's firm in prison for 8 years. You're not even in my league." Rachel's calculation returned, her tears drying instantly. "If you tell Marcus, you'll hurt him just as much as we did." "True, but I'll be giving him the truth. You gave him lies." I turned toward the door. "Pack your things, I'm telling him everything today." "Wait." Her voice turned sharp. "You tell Marcus and I'll make sure everyone knows you've been having an affair too. I'll say I caught you with someone. Your reputation, your career." I actually laughed. "You're going to lie about me? With what proof? I have 8 months of documented evidence against you. Photos, bank statements, lease agreements. What do you have? A story no one will believe." I opened the door. "You've got 2 hours before Marcus gets home. I'd use them wisely." Her final words chased me to my car. "Daniel still loves you. He made a mistake." I drove away without responding, because that was the thing about people like Rachel and Daniel. They thought love excused everything. That emotion trumped betrayal. They had no idea that love without respect, without honesty, without basic human decency, was worth less than nothing. At my lawyer's office, Sarah had news. Daniel's attorney called. He wants to negotiate. No negotiations. He's offering to walk away from the house, most of the assets, if you agree to keep the affair private. Absolutely not. I settled into the chair across from her desk. I want this public. I want everyone to know exactly what they did. Sarah's smile was predatory. I was hoping you'd say that. I've prepared a press release detailing the affair, the financial fraud, and the planned con against your brother. My contact at the Chronicle is interested in running it. Do it. I checked my watch. I'm meeting Marcus in an hour. He needs to hear it from me first. The coffee shop where I'd arranged to meet my brother was nearly empty, late afternoon light slanting through the windows. Marcus arrived looking exhausted, his suit rumpled, tie loose. He'd lost weight since the wedding, 3 days ago, though it felt like years. Cass. He slid into the booth across from me. What the hell happened at my wedding? Mom's been calling non-stop. Daniel showed up at my office yesterday begging me to talk to you, and Rachel's been crying all weekend. Rachel's been crying? I couldn't help the bitter laugh. That's rich. What's going on? Did you and Daniel have a fight? Because whatever it is, you can't just... Daniel and Rachel have been having an affair for 8 months. I said it flat, emotionless, watching my brother's face crumble. I caught them at your wedding. That's what you saw. That's why I left. Marcus stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. That's not... You're wrong. Rachel loves me. She wouldn't... I slid the envelope across the table. Look at the photos. All of them. He didn't want to. I watched him resist, watched denial war with curiosity, watched the moment he gave in and opened it. His hands shook as he flipped through image after image. Rachel and Daniel at restaurants, hotels. Walking hand in hand on the beach. His face went gray. Marcus, get away from me. He shoved the envelope back across the table, photos scattering. You're lying. You faked these. You're jealous because I'm happy and you're... There's more. I kept my voice gentle, hating what I had to do next. Rachel has $60,000 in credit card debt she never told you about. She's been maintaining a secret apartment. She and Daniel signed a lease together 3 weeks ago. They were planning to leave us. Stop it. His voice broke. Just stop. They were going to frame you with your assistant, make it look like you were cheating so Rachel could divorce you and take half your trust fund. I pulled out the lease agreement, the bank statements. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Marcus. But you need to know the truth. He stood abruptly, nearly knocking over the table. Several customers turned to stare. You're my sister. How could you do this to me? On my wedding day, you make a scene, and now you're trying to destroy my marriage with lies. They're not lies. I stood too, reaching for him. Marcus, please, I know this hurts, but... Don't touch me. He backed away, his face twisted with pain and rage. I don't know what's wrong with you, Cassandra. Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe you've been so obsessed with your career that you've forgotten what family means. But I'm done. I'm done with your drama and your accusations and your need to make everyone as miserable as you are. He left me standing there, the photos scattered across the table, while strangers pretended not to watch. I gathered the evidence slowly, mechanically. This was what truth cost. This was the price of justice. My phone buzzed. Sarah Chen. Press release goes live tomorrow morning. Are you ready? I typed back, yes. Because Marcus would forgive me eventually, or he wouldn't. But at least he'd know the truth. At least he'd have a chance to protect himself. That was more than Daniel and Rachel had given either of us. The war had begun, and I was just getting started. The press release hit Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. By 8, my phone had exploded with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. By 9, the story was trending on local news sites. Local architect's affair with brother's bride exposed, read the headline. With a professional photo of Daniel from his firm's website next to a screenshot from Rachel's Instagram at the wedding. I watched it unfold from my hotel suite. I still couldn't bring myself to go back to the house yet, with coffee and a grim satisfaction. Sarah Chen had included just enough detail to be devastating without crossing into libel. The affair, the timeline, the secret apartment, the financial manipulation, everything documented, everything provable. My mother called at 9:15. I answered this time. How could you? Her voice was pure ice. You've humiliated this entire family. Everyone at the club is talking about us. Margaret Henderson asked me at yoga this morning if it was true that Daniel was having an affair with Marcus's wife. At yoga, Cassandra. It is true, Mother. That's not the point. You handle these things privately, through lawyers, not by broadcasting our family's problems to the entire city. She was working herself into one of her legendary rages. Your father and I raised you better than this. This vindictiveness, this need for public revenge, it's beneath you. Is it beneath Rachel and Daniel? I kept my voice level. Was their affair private enough for you? Was humiliating me at Marcus's wedding discreet enough? That's different. They made a mistake. A mistake? The laugh that escaped me was sharp enough to cut. Mother, they planned this for months. They signed a lease together. They used my money to fund their affair. That's not a mistake. It's calculated betrayal. Well, now you've ruined any chance of reconciliation. Daniel called your father this morning saying he wants to work things out, that he made an error in judgment but still loves you. I don't care what Daniel wants. I stood, pacing the hotel room. Tell me something. When you saw them together at the wedding, before I dropped that glass, did you know? Had you suspected? Silence. Mother? I thought they were just close friends. Her voice was smaller now. Rachel would mention him sometimes, said he was helping with the house design. I thought it was innocent. And Daniel always spoke so highly of her, but I thought he was just being supportive of Marcus's relationship. You saw what you wanted to see, and you're seeing what you want to see now. Revenge instead of forgiveness. You could save your marriage, Cassandra. Daniel made a mistake, but 7 years together has to count for something. I thought about the private investigator's photos. Daniel's hand on Rachel's bare skin. The hotel rooms charged to our account. The lease they'd signed, planning their future while sleeping in my bed. It counts for exactly nothing. Goodbye, Mother. I hung up and immediately received a text from Victoria Hammond. Daniel's architecture firm just issued a statement placing him on indefinite leave. Rachel deleted all her social media accounts an hour ago. You're winning. But it didn't feel like winning yet. Marcus hadn't returned any of my calls. My mother thought I was a vindictive monster. And somewhere in the city, Daniel and Rachel were probably strategizing their next move, trying to figure out how to minimize the damage. My father called next. Your mother is upset. I know. She'll come around. She just needs time to process. He paused. I saw the news. Good work building your case. That evidence is airtight. Thanks, Dad. My throat tightened. Have you talked to Marcus? He's not answering my calls either. But Cassandra, you should know. I drove by his house this morning. Rachel's car is gone. Looks like she moved out. The satisfaction was immediate and warming. Did Marcus kick her out? I don't know. His car's there, but the house was dark. I'm worried about him. My father's voice carried the weight of helplessness. He won't talk to me, won't talk to you. He's alone in there dealing with this, and I don't know how to help him. He needs time. I hoped I was right. He's angry at me now, but eventually he'll see I did this for him. I hope so, because right now you've lost your husband and your brother in the same week. After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone. My father was right. The casualties were mounting. But what was I supposed to have done? Let them continue the affair? Let Rachel take half of Marcus's trust fund in a fraudulent divorce? Stand by while they built their life together on the ruins of ours? Sarah Chen called at noon. Daniel's attorney wants to meet. They're ready to discuss settlement terms. Already? I'd expected more fight. The press release did its job. His reputation is destroyed, his firm put him on leave, and apparently 3 major clients pulled their contracts this morning. He's hemorrhaging money and credibility. Sarah's satisfaction was audible. They want to negotiate before this gets worse. What are they offering? Full surrender. You keep the house, most of the assets, and he'll accept minimal settlement, just enough to get an apartment and start over. In exchange, you agree to stop talking to the press. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. No. Cassandra, I don't want him to start over comfortably. I want him to understand what it feels like to lose everything. I stood looking out the hotel window at the city below. He took 7 years of my life, made me look like a fool, used my money to fund his affair. I'm not stopping until he's broken. That's going to make this ugly. It's already ugly. Let's make it devastatingly ugly. I turned from the window. What else can we do? Sarah was quiet for a moment. There's the prenup issue. We didn't have a prenup. Exactly. Which means everything acquired during the marriage is community property. But your inheritance from your grandmother, the money that paid for the house down payment, that's separate property. If we can prove Daniel used community property to fund his affair, and that the affair constitutes financial fraud, we can argue for you to keep everything based on his breach of fiduciary duty. Do it. My voice was cold. I want him to walk away with nothing. Not an apartment. Not enough to start over. Nothing. Cassandra, even in California, courts rarely award 100% to one spouse. Then let's be the exception. I grabbed my laptop. I'm a forensic accountant, Sarah. Let me dig into our finances more deeply. If Daniel was funding this affair with our money, there will be a trail. And if there's a trail, I'll find it. For the next 6 hours, I did what I did best. Followed the money. Every joint account, every credit card, every transaction over the past 8 months. The pattern emerged like a photograph developing in chemicals. Hotel rooms in Carmel, San Francisco, Monterey. Restaurants I'd never been to. A jewelry purchase in April. The same month Daniel gave me a necklace for our anniversary, except the receipt showed 2 necklaces purchased. One for me, one for Rachel. I called Sarah at 6 p.m. I found it. He bought Rachel jewelry with our money. Over $8,000 in purchases I can prove went to her, not me. That's good. What else? Payments to a furniture store. $4,000 in March. I went back through emails. He told me he was buying new office furniture for the firm. But the delivery address is the secret apartment. Better. Keep going. By midnight, I had a spreadsheet that would make any prosecutor weep with joy. $12,000 in furniture, $8,000 in jewelry, $23,000 in hotel rooms and romantic dinners, $6,000 in clothing purchases, men's clothes from high-end stores I'd never shopped at. Everything charged to accounts with my name on them. Everything funded by money I'd earned. He spent $49,000 of our marital assets on his affair, I told Sarah the next morning. Documented, provable, and entirely without my knowledge or consent. That's financial fraud. Sarah's voice carried predatory satisfaction. With this, we can push for punitive damages, not just keeping your assets, but taking some of his. What does he have that's his alone? His 401k, about $300,000. His partnership stake in the architecture firm, probably worth $500,000. A boat he inherited from his father. Some stock portfolios. She paused. With this level of fraud, we could argue you're entitled to compensation beyond the normal 50-50 split. I'm thinking 70-30 in your favor. I want it all, Sarah. That's not realistic. Make it realistic. I stared at my spreadsheet, each line item a knife in my back. He stole from me to fund his affair. He humiliated me publicly. He planned to abandon me for my brother's wife. I want everything. His retirement, his partnership, his boat, his stocks. Everything. Sarah was silent for a long moment. You understand that kind of demand will force this to trial? He'll fight. It'll get vicious. Good. I felt the cold rage crystallize into purpose. Let him fight. Every court document, every filing, every piece of evidence will be public record. The more he fights, the more people will see exactly what he did. I'm not interested in a quiet settlement, Sarah. I'm interested in complete destruction. All right. I heard her pen scratching paper. But you need to prepare for the counterattack. Daniel's attorney will paint you as vindictive, unstable, maybe even claim you drove him to the affair through neglect or coldness. They'll try to make you the villain. Let them try. I closed my laptop. I have 8 months of documented evidence. What do they have? A cheating husband's hurt feelings? My phone buzzed. Marcus, finally. My heart jumped. The text read, Rachel told me everything. How you've been trying to destroy our marriage from the beginning because you were jealous. How you hired a private investigator to stalk us. How you fabricated evidence. I should have known you'd never accept my happiness. Lose my number. I read it 3 times, each word a physical blow. Then I called Victoria Hammond. I need you to send Marcus every piece of evidence you have. Every photo, every receipt, every document. Send it directly to him with a cover letter explaining how the investigation started and why. Make sure he understands this isn't fabricated. Cassandra, if he's chosen not to believe you, send it anyway. My voice cracked. He's my brother. He deserves the full truth, even if he doesn't want it. That afternoon, I finally returned to the house Daniel and I had shared for 7 years. My house now, according to Sarah, though it didn't feel like mine yet. The locks had been changed per my attorney's instructions. Everything looked exactly as I'd left it Sunday morning. Coffee cup in the sink, magazine on the counter, throw blanket draped over the couch. Except Daniel's things were gone. His clothes, his toiletries, his laptop from the home office. He'd come while I was at the hotel and taken what he could. Good. It saved me the trouble of packing it up. I walked through the empty house, each room echoing with memories now tainted. The kitchen where we'd cooked together on weekends, the living room where we'd watched movies, the bedroom where I'd slept beside him, trusting him, loving him, while he planned his future with another woman. In his office, I found something he'd missed. A photo in the back of a drawer. Daniel and Rachel at the secret apartment, her arms around his neck, his hands on her waist, both of them laughing. Someone had taken the picture for them, which meant they'd been comfortable enough to have friends over, to be public about their relationship in their own space while maintaining the lie everywhere else. I should have felt rage. Instead, I felt nothing, just a cold, empty determination. My phone rang. Sarah. Daniel's attorney just filed a counter-petition. They're claiming you've engaged in malicious prosecution, that you've defamed him publicly, and they're requesting sanctions for your vindictive behavior. They want you to pay his legal fees. I actually laughed. Of course they do. There's more. They're claiming the money he spent was justified because you'd become emotionally distant and he sought comfort elsewhere. They're painting the affair as your fault. My fault. The words were flat. I worked 60-hour weeks to fund our lifestyle while he used our money to fuck my brother's wife, but it's my fault. Essentially, yes. That's their argument. Sarah paused. Cassandra, I have to ask again. Are you sure you want to keep pushing this? We could still settle. You'd get the house, majority of assets, and avoid a trial. I looked at the photo in my hand. Daniel and Rachel's happy faces, their secret life, the 8 months of lies while I'd trusted him completely. No settlement, we go to trial. I want a jury to hear every detail of what they did. I want it on public record forever. All right. Sarah's voice held a note of respect. Then let's give them a war they'll never forget. That night, alone in the house, I opened a bottle of wine, a vintage Daniel had been saving for a special occasion, and sat in the dark living room. My phone buzzed with messages I didn't read. The house creaked and settled around me. Somewhere in the city, Daniel was probably with Rachel, probably convincing her that everything would be fine, that they'd weather this storm together. They had no idea what was coming. Because while they'd been busy having their affair, I'd spent 7 years prosecuting financial criminals. I knew how to build unbreakable cases. I knew how to find hidden assets. I knew exactly how to destroy someone financially, professionally, personally, and I was just getting started. The deposition took place in a sterile conference room with fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly ill. Daniel sat across from me for the first time since the wedding, his attorney beside him, a shark named Robert Pemberton, who specialized in defending wealthy men from their angry wives. I had Sarah and my own stack of evidence 2 inches thick. Mr. Pierce, Sarah began, her voice professional and cold. Can you explain these charges to the account ending in 7743 on March 15th? Daniel glanced at the highlighted bank statement. That's the Carmel Hotel. I needed a weekend to clear my head. Clear your head? Sarah slid a photo across the table. Is that what you call having sex with Rachel Montgomery in a luxury suite? Because the hotel confirms you checked in for 2 people, not 1. His jaw tightened. I refused to answer without, you'll answer or be held in contempt. Sarah's smile was razor sharp. This is a deposition, Mr. Pierce, not a negotiation. Now, did you or did you not use marital funds to take your mistress to a romantic weekend in Carmel while your wife believed you were at a conference? Yes. The word came out strangled. And these charges? She slid over more statements. San Francisco in April, Monterey in May, a total of 17 documented trips, each time using money from accounts in your wife's name. I watched Daniel squirm, watched Pemberton whisper urgently in his ear. This was what I'd waited for, to see him forced to admit every lie under oath, recorded for posterity. Mr. Pierce, did you purchase 2 necklaces in April from Cartier? One for your wife and one for your mistress, using your wife's money? Objection, Pemberton interjected. My client doesn't have to answer questions designed to... Overruled. The court reporter kept typing. Answer the question, Mr. Pierce. Yes. Daniel's face was red now. But Cassandra was always working. She didn't notice what I spent. So because your wife was working to support your household, you felt entitled to steal her money to fund an affair. Sarah didn't give him time to answer. Let's talk about the lease agreement. You signed a 12-month lease with Rachel Montgomery for an apartment at 2250 Fifth Street, correct? Yes. While still married to my client? Yes. While Rachel Montgomery was engaged to marry Cassandra's brother? Yes. Each admission was getting quieter. And you furnished this apartment using marital funds? $4,000 in furniture purchases charged to accounts with Cassandra's name on them? Daniel looked at Pemberton, who nodded reluctantly. Yes. Mr. Pierce, did you and Ms. Montgomery discuss plans to divorce your respective spouses and begin a life together? Silence. Mr. Pierce, need I remind you that you're under oath? We discussed it. His voice was barely audible. It was just talk. We never seriously... You signed a lease together. You furnished an apartment together. You spent $49,000 of your wife's money on this relationship. Sarah leaned forward. That sounds quite serious to me. The deposition lasted 4 hours. By the end, Daniel looked like he'd aged 10 years. Every question Sarah asked built the case that he hadn't just had an affair. He'd committed systematic financial fraud against his spouse. And all of it was now on the record, public information anyone could access. Pemberton requested a break. In the hallway, he approached Sarah with an offer I could hear from my position near the water cooler. My client is willing to settle for 40-60 split, him taking 40%. He'll sign away all claims to the house and admit fault in the marriage dissolution. No. I stepped forward before Sarah could respond. We're not settling. Pemberton looked at me with something like pity. Mrs. Pierce, you're letting emotion cloud your judgment. My client made mistakes, but destroying him won't heal your pain. This isn't about pain, I said calmly. This is about justice. Your client stole from me, humiliated me, and planned to abandon me. I want a jury to hear every sordid detail. I want them to see exactly what kind of man Daniel Pierce is. You're being unreasonable. I'm being fair. I met his eyes. If I'd done to Daniel what he did to me, would you advise him to settle for 60%? Or would you tell him to take me for everything I had? Pemberton's silence was answer enough. That evening, I met my father for dinner at his request. He chose a quiet Italian place far from our usual haunts. Your mother is still upset, he said after we'd ordered. But she's starting to understand why you did what you did. Is she? I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. She talked to Margaret Henderson, whose daughter went through something similar. Different circumstances, but the same kind of betrayal. He reached across the table to squeeze my hand. She's coming around, slowly. And Marcus? My father's face fell. He filed for divorce. Rachel moved back to her apartment, the one he didn't know about. But he won't talk to anyone, won't see anyone. I'm worried about him, Cassandra. Did Victoria's evidence reach him? I don't know. He won't answer calls or texts. My father looked older suddenly, worn down by the fracturing of his family. He sent me one message. Tell Cassandra she got what she wanted. We're both divorced now. Hope she's happy. The words hit harder than I expected. I didn't want this. I know. My father's voice was gentle. But Marcus sees it differently. In his mind, you destroyed his marriage. Rachel destroyed his marriage. I just exposed it. That's not how grief works, sweetheart. He's not thinking rationally right now. He's hurt and angry and looking for someone to blame. You're an easier target than his wife. He paused. Give him time. He'll come around eventually. What if he doesn't? My father didn't answer, which was answer enough. The trial date was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, my life became a strange new normal. I returned to work, enduring pitying looks from colleagues who'd read about the affair. I moved back into the house permanently, reclaiming space that had felt like enemy territory. I attended therapy twice a week, processing the betrayal with a professional who specialized in infidelity trauma. And I watched as Daniel's life systematically fell apart, His architecture firm officially terminated his partnership, buying him out at pennies on the dollar due to the morality clause in his contract. 3 major clients filed suit claiming his personal misconduct damaged their business relationships. His face appeared in a local business journal article titled, "When Personal Scandal Destroys Professional Reputation." Rachel fared worse. Her consulting business evaporated as clients distanced themselves from the scandal. Marcus apparently frozen their joint accounts, leaving her scrambling financially. She moved back in with her parents according to my mother's country club gossip network. The wedding gifts had to be returned, but Marcus still wouldn't speak to me. I tried everything: calls, texts, emails, showing up at his house unannounced. Each attempt met with silence or, once, him opening the door just long enough to say, "I have nothing to say to you," before closing it in my face. The trial began on a Monday morning in late August. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters. Sarah's PR strategy had worked, and the case had become something of a local sensation. "Scorned wife seeks total financial destruction of cheating husband," read one headline. "Forensic accountant uses professional skills against unfaithful spouse," read another. I wore a navy suit, minimal jewelry, my hair pulled back severely. Sarah had coached me on appearance: professional, composed, victimized, but not broken. I looked like someone who'd been wronged but refused to be destroyed. Daniel wore a suit that looked expensive but worn. The contrast was intentional on his attorney's part. Make him look like the victim of my vindictiveness. Jury selection took 2 days. Sarah rejected anyone who'd been through a similar betrayal, wanting jurors who could view the case logically rather than emotionally. Pemberton rejected anyone in finance or accounting, afraid they'd sympathize with my professional analysis of Daniel's fraud. Opening statements began Wednesday. Pemberton painted me as a cold, career-obsessed wife who'd driven her husband into the arms of another woman through neglect and emotional distance. "My client made a mistake," he told the jury. "A terrible mistake born from loneliness and a desperate need for connection. But does that mistake justify destroying his entire life? Taking everything he's worked for? Mrs. Pierce wants revenge, not justice." Sarah's opening was surgical. "This case is not about infidelity. Affairs happen, marriages end, hearts break. That's life. This case is about theft, about a man who systematically stole $49,000 from his wife to fund a relationship with her brother's fiancé, who forged signatures, who hid assets, who committed financial fraud with the intent to abandon his wife and leave her with nothing." She displayed the evidence on a screen. "The defense will ask for your sympathy, but sympathy doesn't excuse theft, and theft is exactly what Daniel Pierce committed." I testified on Thursday. Sarah led me through the timeline methodically: meeting Daniel, our marriage, the joint accounts we'd opened, my salary as a forensic accountant that exceeded his income from the architecture firm, my inheritance from my grandmother that paid the down payment on our house. "When did you first suspect the affair?" Sarah asked. 2 weeks before my brother's wedding. I noticed unusual charges on our account, a hotel room in Napa Valley. Daniel told me he was at a conference that weekend, but the hotel wasn't where the conference was held. I kept my voice steady. That's when I hired a private investigator. And what did the investigation reveal? 8 months of documented meetings between my husband and my brother's fiancé. 17 hotel visits, multiple romantic dinners, the lease they'd signed together for an apartment I knew nothing about. I looked directly at the jury. They'd been planning to leave us, to let Rachel marry my brother, access his trust fund, then divorce him, and take half while she and Daniel moved into their new apartment together. How did that make you feel? Objection, Pemberton called. Relevance? Your Honor, the emotional impact goes to damages, Sarah argued. I'll allow it. I took a breath. Betrayed. Humiliated. Used. My husband stole my money to fund an affair with a woman I'd welcomed into our family. They laughed at me, both of them, while I trusted them. That's not just infidelity, it's cruelty. Daniel's cross-examination was brutal. Pemberton tried every angle, suggesting I'd been emotionally unavailable, that I'd prioritized work over marriage, that my obsessive investigation was evidence of instability. Mrs. Pierce, your colleagues describe you as someone who works 60 to 70 hours per week. Is that accurate? Sometimes, yes. And when you came home from these long days, did you make time for your husband? For intimacy? For connection? Objection, Sarah called. This is victim blaming. Sustained. But the damage was done. Pemberton had planted the seed that maybe, just maybe, I'd contributed to Daniel's infidelity through neglect. Daniel testified Friday. He admitted to the affair, admitted to the spending, but framed it all as the desperate actions of a lonely man whose wife had emotionally abandoned him. I love Cassandra, he said, his voice breaking theatrically. I never meant to hurt her. Rachel and I, it just happened. We were both lonely, both feeling neglected in our relationships. It was wrong, I know that. But I never intended for it to become what it did. And the money you spent? Pemberton asked. I didn't think about it. The accounts were joint, and I'd always handled our finances. I never meant to steal from her. I wasn't thinking clearly. Sarah's cross was merciless. Mr. Pierce, you signed a lease for an apartment. That requires planning, doesn't it? I suppose. You can't accidentally sign a year-long lease? No. And you furnished this apartment. $4,000 in furniture purchases. That requires going to stores, selecting items, arranging delivery. All of which takes time and intention, correct? Yes. So this wasn't just an affair that happened. This was a relationship you actively cultivated and invested in over 8 months, using your wife's money? Daniel's composure cracked. I made mistakes. I'm not saying I didn't. But does that mean I deserve to lose everything? That's for the jury to decide. Sarah's smile was cold. No further questions. Closing arguments Monday morning were equally dramatic. Pemberton appealed to the jury's mercy, painting Daniel as a flawed man who deserved compassion rather than destruction. Sarah countered with pure mathematics, $49,000 in documented theft, $300,000 in his 401k, $500,000 in business assets, all of which should go to compensating the woman he'd defrauded. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. I sat in the courthouse hallway with Sarah, my father, and surprisingly, my mother, who'd arrived that morning without announcement. I'm sorry, she said quietly, taking my hand, for not understanding sooner, for caring more about appearances than about what you'd been through. Mom, no, let me finish. Her eyes were red. I talked to Margaret and to several other women at the club whose daughters had been through similar situations, and I realized I'd been treating you like you were the problem when you were the victim. I'm sorry, Cassandra. I squeezed her hand, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. The bailiff appeared. Jury's back. We filed into the courtroom. Daniel sat at the defense table looking pale. The jury foreman stood, holding the verdict form. In the matter of Pierce versus Pierce, we find that the defendant, Daniel Pierce, did commit financial fraud against the plaintiff. We award the plaintiff 100% of marital assets, including the house, all joint accounts, and compensatory damages to be paid from the defendant's 401k in the amount of $49,000, the exact amount he stole to fund his affair. I didn't react, didn't smile, didn't cry, just sat there as the verdict washed over me. Furthermore, the foreman continued, we find that the defendant's partnership stake in Pearson Associates Architecture should be liquidated and 70% awarded to the plaintiff as additional compensation for emotional distress and reputational damage. Pemberton shot to his feet. Your Honor, that's excessive. The jury has spoken, Mr. Pemberton. The judge banged his gavel. Judgment entered in favor of the plaintiff. Sarah leaned close. You won. You won everything. But sitting there, watching Daniel's face crumble, I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. Until I looked at the gallery and saw Marcus sitting in the back row. Our eyes met across the courtroom. He stood and walked out without a word. But he'd been there. He'd heard everything. And that finally felt like the beginning of something like justice. The paperwork took 2 weeks to finalize. Daniel was required to liquidate his partnership stake in the architecture firm, his retirement account, even sell the boat he'd inherited from his father. Every asset methodically converted to cash and transferred to accounts in my name only. The house, my house now, legally and finally, stood as the largest victory, worth $800,000 free and clear. Sarah Chen's final bill arrived with a note. You were my favorite client. Never apologize for demanding justice. I didn't apologize, but alone in the house on a Friday evening, the settlement documents spread across my dining table, I felt the hollowness of winning. Daniel had lost everything, yes, but I'd lost my marriage, possibly my brother, and nearly 2 years of my life to rage and revenge. My phone rang. Marcus. I answered so fast I nearly dropped it. Marcus? I was at the trial. His voice was flat, emotionless. Heard everything, saw the evidence. I tried to tell you, I know. Silence stretched between us. Rachel called me yesterday, asked if we could talk, said she wanted to explain. I told her I'd had enough explanations from her to last a lifetime. Marcus, I'm so sorry. Stop. The word was sharp. I'm not calling for an apology. I'm calling because I need you to know something. He took a breath I could hear over the phone. Victoria Hammond sent me every piece of evidence, every photo, every receipt, every document. I ignored it for weeks. Told myself you'd faked it somehow, that you were jealous or crazy or just wanted to destroy my happiness. I never wanted to destroy your happiness. I know that now. His voice cracked. I finally looked at everything 2 days ago, really looked, and I saw dates, timestamps, details that couldn't be fabricated. I saw my wife Cassandra, touching your husband the way she was supposed to touch me, smiling at him the way she smiled at me on our wedding day. I closed my eyes, tears finally breaking through. I'm so sorry. She took me for $200,000. The words came out hollow. Transferred money from our joint account to that secret apartment fund, charged luxury items to my credit cards, planned to divorce me and take half my trust fund. And I was going to let her because I loved her, because I trusted her, because my sister said she was lying and I chose to believe my wife over my own blood. Marcus, you saved me, Cass. He was crying now. You exposed her before she could finish destroying me, and I repaid you by cutting you out of my life, by calling you vindictive and jealous, by believing I was the victim when you were protecting me. You were a victim. Both of us were. Can I come over? The question was tentative. I know I don't deserve... Yes. I was already moving toward the door. Yes, please come over. He arrived 20 minutes later, looking thinner than I'd ever seen him, his suit hanging loose on his frame. Dark circles under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights. When I opened the door, we just stood there for a moment before he pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. I'm sorry, he whispered into my hair. I'm so sorry, Cass. You tried to tell me, and I called you a liar. You tried to protect me, and I told you to lose my number. I chose Rachel over you, and I can't forgive myself for that. You don't have to forgive yourself. You were in love. People in love want to believe the best. I led him inside, to the couch where we'd sat together hundreds of times growing up. But you're here now. That's what matters. We talked for hours. He told me about the divorce proceedings, how Rachel had tried to claim she deserved half his trust fund despite their brief marriage, how his attorneys, armed with Victoria's evidence, had gotten her to settle for nothing, how she'd shown up at his office begging for another chance, claiming Daniel had seduced her, manipulated her, that she'd always loved Marcus. I almost believed her, he admitted. She was crying, saying all the right things. Then I remembered something you said at the coffee shop, that love without respect or honesty is worth less than nothing. She didn't respect me enough to be honest. Neither did Daniel with you. So I told her to leave and never contact me again. How did she react? Badly. Started screaming that I'd regret this, that she could destroy me with one phone call to the tabloids. He laughed bitterly. I told her to go ahead. After what you went through, the press release, the public humiliation, the trial, I realized reputation means nothing compared to truth. Let her tell whatever lies she wants. The truth is already public record. I squeezed his hand. I'm proud of you. Don't be. I should have believed you from the start. He looked around the house. Is Daniel really left with nothing? Essentially, he kept enough from his 401k for a small apartment and basic living expenses. But his partnership, his reputation, his professional network, all gone. Last I heard, he's working as a junior architect at a firm in Sacramento. Entry-level pay, no prestige, starting over at 40 years old. Good. There was no sympathy in Marcus's voice. He deserves it. They both do. He paused. I saw something else in Victoria's evidence. They were planning to frame me with my assistant, Gina Torres. I know. I'm sorry you had to find out. I fired her. Not because she did anything wrong, but because I can't look at her without wondering if she knew, if she was complicit, if every late night working was part of their plan. He rubbed his face tiredly. I don't trust anyone anymore, Cass. Not colleagues, not friends, definitely not women. They broke something in me. They broke something in both of us. I stood, went to the kitchen, came back with wine, the good stuff I'd been saving. But we're still here, still standing, still breathing. That's more than they can say. We drank in companionable silence before Marcus asked the question I'd been dreading. Do you regret it? Going after them so hard? Destroying them so completely? I thought about it honestly. No, they deserved everything that happened to them. But I regret the cost. The family drama. Mom being upset, you being caught in the middle. If I'd known how much collateral damage there would be. You'd have done it anyway, Marcus finished. Because that's who you are. You don't let injustice stand. You don't let people get away with hurting the ones you love. That's what makes you a good person, Cass. Even when it makes things messy. I lost you for months. But you got me back. And I'm not going anywhere again. He raised his glass. To siblings who stick together through everything, even when everything is a dumpster fire of biblical proportions. I laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in months. To dumpster fires. We spent the weekend together rebuilding what had been broken. Marcus helped me finally pack up Daniel's remaining things from the garage, golf clubs, old college textbooks, a box of photos from before we married. We threw most of it away, donated some, kept nothing. What are you going to do with this place? Marcus asked, looking around the large house designed by my cheating ex-husband. It's a lot of space for one person. I don't know yet. Part of me wants to sell it, start completely fresh somewhere new, but another part wants to reclaim it, make it mine in a way it never was with Daniel. I stood in the living room, seeing it with new eyes. Maybe I'll renovate, gut the whole thing, rebuild it exactly how I want it. That feels right, Marcus nodded. Take what he built and remake it into something better, something that's entirely yours. My mother called Sunday evening. Marcus told me he's speaking to you again. I'm glad. I've been worried about both of you. Thanks, Mom. I owe you an apology, a real one, not the half-hearted thing I said at the courthouse. She took a breath. I was wrong to prioritize appearances over your pain, wrong to suggest you should forgive Daniel, wrong to make his affair somehow your fault because you worked hard. You deserved better from me, and I'm sorry. Mom, let me finish. Your father and I talked, a lot, about how we raised you girls, about the values we instilled, about why you felt you had to go nuclear on Daniel and Rachel. She paused. And we realized we taught you to stand up for yourself, to never let anyone diminish you, to fight for what's right. Then when you did exactly that, I punished you for it. That was wrong. The tears came unexpected and hot. Thank you. I love you, Cassandra, and I'm proud of you, not just for winning, but for refusing to be a victim, for turning your pain into power. That takes strength most people don't have. After we hung up, I stood in the house, my house, and felt something shift. The empty revenge was filling with something else. Not happiness exactly, but possibility. The future was blank canvas, mine to paint however I wanted. I called Sarah Chen Monday morning. I want to do something with the settlement money. Invest it, buy property, travel the world. Fund a nonprofit for women going through high-conflict divorces who can't afford quality legal representation. I'd been thinking about it all weekend. I saw how much my case cost. Most women can't pay those retainers. can't hire private investigators, can't fight back against powerful men with expensive lawyers. I want to change that." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "That's actually brilliant. And poetic justice, using money you won from Daniel to help other women escape situations like yours." "Exactly." I felt the first real excitement I'd experienced in months. "I want to call it the Lillian Pierce Foundation, after my grandmother. She left me the inheritance that made all this possible. She deserves to have her name on something meaningful." "I'll draw up the paperwork." "This is going to be amazing, Cassandra." The foundation launched 3 months later. Sarah agreed to sit on the board of directors, along with Victoria Hammond, my father, and 2 family law judges I'd networked with during my case. We rented office space, hired a small staff, and began accepting applications from women in desperate situations. The first client was a teacher whose husband had cleaned out their bank accounts before filing for divorce. She couldn't afford an attorney, couldn't fight back, was facing losing custody of her kids. The foundation paid for top-tier legal representation. She won primary custody and 60% of assets, including the accounts he'd emptied, which we traced and recovered. The second client was a nurse whose husband's attorney was burying her in paperwork she couldn't afford to respond to. The foundation matched her with a pit bull lawyer who not only responded but countersued for legal fees. Her husband settled immediately. Case after case, woman after woman, we leveled the playing field. Local media picked up the story. Scorned wife turns pain into purpose, and donations started flowing in. By month 6, we'd helped 32 women. By month 12, over 100. Marcus joined the board in February, bringing business expertise and fundraising connections. "I want to help," he said simply. Rachel took things from me too. This feels like the right way to fight back. Not against her specifically, but against everyone like her. My own healing came slowly, through therapy and time and purpose. The nightmares faded. The anger cooled to something manageable. I even started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee with a law professor who made me laugh and didn't ask about Daniel unless I brought him up first. A year after the trial, I ran into Rachel at a grocery store. She looked tired, older, her designer clothes replaced by off-brand substitutes. Our eyes met across the produce section. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, then closed it and hurried away. I didn't feel triumph, didn't feel vindication, just felt nothing. She was a stranger who'd once tried to destroy my life and failed. That was all. Daniel, I heard through the gossip network, had moved to Oregon. Working for a small firm, living alone, apparently still trying to rebuild his reputation. He'd reached out once through his attorney, asking if we could talk about closure. I'd declined through Sarah. There was nothing to say. The real victory came 18 months post-trial at a foundation fundraiser. Over 300 people attended. Clients we'd helped, donors, board members, volunteers. Marcus gave a speech about family and betrayal and healing. My mother introduced me to her entire book club, all wealthy women who'd pledged monthly donations. My father stood beside me with quiet pride. And when I took the stage to thank everyone, to share our numbers, 200 women helped, 6 million in settlements recovered, countless lives rebuilt, I finally felt what I'd been chasing since that awful night at the wedding. Not revenge, not victory, but peace. My ex-husband tried to destroy me, I told the audience. He used my trust, my money, my love against me. And for a while, I let his betrayal define my life. I let rage and pain drive every decision. But then I realized something. He'd taken enough from me. He didn't get to take my future too. I looked out at the crowd, survivors, supporters, people who'd turned pain into purpose just like me. So I built this. We built this. A place where betrayal doesn't mean destruction, where financial abuse doesn't mean defeat, where women can fight back and win. That's the real revenge, not destroying him, but creating something meaningful from the ashes of what he burned down. The applause was deafening. And standing there, surrounded by people who understood, I finally let go of the last thread of bitterness I'd been holding. Daniel and Rachel had tried to break me. Instead, they'd forged me into something stronger. 3 years after the trial, I stood in the completely renovated house. No longer Daniel's design, but mine. Every wall had been repainted. The kitchen gutted and rebuilt with marble counters and commercial-grade appliances I'd chosen myself. The master bedroom where I'd slept beside my lying husband was now my home office, filled with files from foundation cases and awards from legal organizations recognizing our work. The Lillian Pierce Foundation had grown beyond my wildest expectations. We now had offices in 3 cities, a staff of 22, and had helped over 600 women navigate high-conflict divorces. Our success rate was 93%, meaning 93% of our clients walked away with fair or better settlements, protected custody arrangements, and the resources to rebuild their lives. I'd published a book, Financial Justice, A Forensic Accountant's Guide to Divorce Warfare. It became a bestseller in the legal community, required reading at several law schools, and the Foundation's biggest fundraising tool. Every cent of profit went directly into helping more women. Marcus had remarried, a kind pediatrician named Jennifer, who'd been through her own messy divorce and understood his trust issues. Their wedding was small, intimate, nothing like the disaster of his first attempt. I walked him down the aisle this time, our father too emotional to make it through without breaking down. "This one's different," Marcus told me the night before the wedding. "Jenny knows everything, about Rachel, about the betrayal, about why I'm cautious. And she's patient with it. She understands that trust is built, not given." "I'm happy for you," I'd said, meaning it completely. "I want the same for you," he'd replied. "Not marriage necessarily, but happiness. Real happiness, not just the satisfaction of winning." I was working on it. The law professor, David, had become my partner, though we'd agreed to keep things simple. No joint accounts, no shared property, no rushing into commitment. He understood my boundaries and respected them. More importantly, he'd read every document from my divorce trial before our 3rd date. "I wanted to know exactly what I was getting into," he'd explained. "And I wanted you to know I'd read it and still wanted to be here." That kind of transparency, after years of Daniel's lies, felt like oxygen. My parents had retired to a beach house in San Diego, finally relaxing after the drama that had consumed their golden years. My mother volunteered with a domestic violence shelter, her perspective forever changed by what I'd been through. My father sent me articles about financial fraud cases, proud that his daughter had become something of an expert in the field. Daniel's life, by contrast, had stagnated. He'd tried to rebuild his reputation in Oregon, but the internet never forgot. Potential clients Googled his name and found the trial transcripts, the evidence of fraud, the unanimous jury verdict. His small architecture firm had let him go after 18 months. Last I heard, he was working in construction, designing blueprints for a residential building company, earning a third of what he'd made at his peak. He'd reached out twice more over the years. Once through an email to the foundation, which I'd ignored and then blocked. Once through Marcus, asking if there was any possibility of reconciliation. "I told him to go to hell," Marcus had reported. "Told him what he did to you, what he and Rachel did to both of us, was unforgivable. He actually had the nerve to say he'd learned and grown. I said that's great, but it doesn't entitle him to anything from you." I'd sent Marcus a gift basket as thanks. Rachel had disappeared from our social circles entirely. Her parents had moved to Arizona, taking her with them to escape the scandal's aftershocks. She'd tried to restart her consulting business under a different name, but someone had outed her on a professional forum and the attempt collapsed. She worked retail now, according to my mother's gossip network, living in a studio apartment, permanently marked by what she'd done. I felt nothing about their downfalls. Not satisfaction, not pity, nothing. They were strangers who'd once tried to destroy me and failed. Their current struggles were consequences of their own actions, not my concern. The Foundation's 3-year anniversary gala fell on a Saturday in October, coincidentally, almost exactly 3 years after Marcus's disastrous wedding. The venue was the same country club, reclaimed and repurposed. Instead of a wedding reception, it hosted 300 people celebrating justice and healing. Marcus and Jennifer came. My parents flew up from San Diego. Sarah Chen gave a speech about the importance of aggressive representation in family law. Victoria Hammond presented statistics showing how our clients' outcomes compared to national averages, significantly better across every metric. I took the stage for the final speech of the evening, looking out at faces I'd come to know over 3 years of building this organization. Survivors who'd become volunteers, donors who funded our operations, lawyers who took our cases pro bono or at reduced rates. Every person in the room had chosen to turn pain into purpose. 3 years ago, I stood in this building at the lowest point of my life. I began. I'd just discovered my husband was having an affair with my brother's fiancée. My marriage was ending, my family was fracturing, and I made a choice, not to be a victim, but to fight back with every tool I had. I paused, remembering that night with perfect clarity. People called me vindictive, called me cold, said I should forgive, that I should take the high road, that destroying Daniel wouldn't heal my pain. I looked directly at my mother, who smiled with pride. They were wrong. Not about the pain. That took years to heal. But about the fighting back. Because fighting back, demanding justice, refusing to be quietly victimized, that saved me. The audience was silent, attentive. And it saved every woman we've helped through this foundation. The teacher whose husband emptied their accounts, the nurse buried in hostile paperwork, the entrepreneur whose ex tried to take her business, the doctor facing a custody battle funded by her ex's family money. Every one of them fought back, and every one of them won. I gestured to the screens showing our numbers. 600 women helped, $54 million in settlements recovered, 3,000 children protected from manipulative custody arrangements, 0 clients pressured into settlements that left them vulnerable. The numbers scrolled past. That's what fighting back looks like. That's what refusing to be a victim creates. Marcus stood, starting the applause that swept through the room. My ex-husband and his mistress thought they'd broken me, I concluded. They thought betrayal would destroy me, that I'd quietly disappear and let them build their life on the ruins of mine. Instead, I built this. We built this. And every woman who walks through our doors, every survivor who refuses to settle for less than justice, every child protected from a manipulative parent, that's my revenge. Not destroying them, but creating something they never could. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. People I didn't know approached afterward to share their own stories of betrayal and survival. A young woman handed me a check for $10,000. Her divorce settlement, split with the foundation that had helped her win it. An elderly couple donated $100,000 in memory of their daughter, who died by suicide during a brutal divorce before organizations like ours existed. Late that night, after the crowd dispersed and the cleanup crew took over, I stood alone in the country club ballroom. Same marble floors where I'd dropped that champagne glass. Same space where Daniel's hand had slid down Rachel's back while 300 people watched. Same building where my world had shattered. But different now. Reclaimed, repurposed, redeemed. My phone buzzed. David, how did it go? I typed back, perfect, coming home now. Home. The house that was mine alone, filled with furniture I'd chosen, decorated with art I'd selected, every space reflecting my taste instead of Daniel's architectural vision. The office where I worked on cases and wrote articles, the foundation that bore my grandmother's name, the life I'd built from the wreckage of my marriage. That was the real ending. Not Daniel losing everything, though he had. Not Rachel living in a studio apartment in Arizona, though she was. Not even the foundation's success, though I was proud of it. The real ending was driving home alone that night, completely at peace with my choices. No regrets, no second-guessing, no wondering if I'd been too harsh or too vindictive or too unwilling to forgive. I'd demanded justice and gotten it. I'd refused to be a victim and survived. I'd turned my pain into purpose and thrived. Daniel had tried to destroy me. Rachel had aided him. My own mother had initially questioned me. Marcus had temporarily abandoned me. And I'd won anyway. Not because I was cruel or vindictive or cold, but because I'd refused to let betrayal define me. Because I'd used my skills, my resources, my determination to fight back against people who'd assumed I'd quietly break. 3 years later, they were the ones broken. And I was the one standing, stronger than before, surrounded by people I'd helped, building something meaningful, living a life entirely on my terms. That night, in the house that was finally, completely mine, I took the last photo I had of Daniel and Rachel together, the one I'd found in his office drawer, and put it through the shredder. Watched the strips fall into the recycling bin like confetti. Then I opened a bottle of wine, put on music I loved that Daniel had hated, and celebrated 3 years of freedom from people who'd never deserved me in the first place. Somewhere, Daniel was probably still trying to rebuild his reputation. Rachel was probably still working retail, regretting her choices. They were strangers now, their names occasionally surfacing in my mind, but carrying no weight, no pain, no power. I'd taken everything from them that mattered. Not because I was cruel, but because they'd taken everything from me first. The difference was, I'd rebuilt. They never would. And that finally was enough.